Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. Are you ready to ditch those self-sabotaging habits and finally embrace happiness?
Sounds like a plan.
We're diving deep into Resisting Happiness. It's narrated by Eunice Sarang.
Oh, yeah, I listened to that one. It's really insightful.
This book, let me tell you, it was like a personal wake-up call.
Yeah.
You know that feeling when you're like, why am I standing in my own way?
It's so common, though, right? Like, it's a universal experience.
Exactly. And this book, it actually gives a name to that experience.
Yeah.
Resistance.
Resistance. Yeah, that force inside all of us that whispers those doubts, fuels procrastination. You know, the thing that holds us back from, well, becoming the best versions of ourselves.
Totally. It's like we're building these invisible barriers brick by brick with every should and someday, and then we're stuck.
Behind walls of our own making.
Yeah.
It's crazy when you think about it. And here's the real kicker. The book says what we're really resisting is happiness itself.
Which, I mean, it seems so counterintuitive, right? Why would we resist something we all want so badly?
It's like we're almost afraid of happiness in a way, or at least afraid of what it might take to actually achieve it.
That makes sense. Like real happiness, the kind that lasts, that usually involves change, some vulnerability, stepping outside of that comfort zone.
Exactly. Think about it like this. It's way easier to stay on the couch than it is to actually go to the gym, even though, deep down, the gym is better for you.
It's like choosing that sugary drink when you know you should be hydrating.
Right. You know what you should do, but those cravings, those urges to resist, they can be strong.
Okay, so knowing is half the battle.
Right.
But how do we actually put it into practice?
Well, it's a process, just like anything else worth doing. And like building any muscle, it takes time and effort. You don't get a six-pack overnight, right?
Definitely not.
Yeah.
So where do we even begin with this whole overcoming resistance thing?
The book dives into a bunch of reasons why we resist in the first place, which I think is really helpful. We'll get into that.
So we've talked about the sneaky ways we get in our own way. But here's where resisting happiness took me by surprise. It connects resisting happiness to something much bigger.
You mean like a sense of purpose?
Yeah, like that feeling of being connected to something beyond ourselves. The book argues that when we resist happiness, we're actually resisting a higher power.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. And I get it. For some people, the word God can be a bit much.
Totally. But hear me out. Because whether you're deeply religious or haven't stepped foot in a church in years, I think the message still resonates. It's about that universal human desire for fulfillment. That yearning for something bigger than ourselves.
Right, like we're hardwired for it in a way.
Exactly. And the book suggests that aligning with that purpose, however you define it, can be a huge motivator.
It's like tapping into a source of strength and guidance.
Yes. And it's interesting because the book talks about how to actually cultivate that connection.
And I think that's what's so great about Kelly's approach. He's all about practical steps. It's not about becoming some spiritual guru overnight,
No, totally. He talks a lot about his own experiences with prayer and how powerful small, consistent actions can be.
Like just taking a few minutes each day to be present or to reflect.
Right. Or even just pausing for a few deep breaths before diving into a crazy day. It's like that saying, we overestimate what we can do in a day and underestimate what we can do in a year.
So true. And it doesn't have to be complicated. Find what works for you. Kelly talks about the impact of Mass, but he's also clear that you don't need to be in a church to connect with your purpose. Remember that story about him working in the nursing home?
Oh, yeah. On the surface, it might not seem like the most fulfilling environment.
Exactly. But he found so much meaning in those everyday interactions, those small acts of service and connection.
It's a good reminder that we can find purpose and joy in unexpected places, even amidst all the messiness of life.
And that's where it gets real, right? Because life throws curveballs.
Yeah.
So how do we navigate those challenges while staying connected to that sense of purpose?
It's definitely messy sometimes.
Yeah.
Like life can throw some serious curveballs our way.
No doubt. And you know what? The book doesn't try to sugarcoat that at all.
Which I appreciate. It's refreshing.
Totally. Kelly's like, nope, life is going to be messy. Get used to it. In fact, he even shares some examples of prayer requests he's gotten, and they're heavy hitters. Like illness, job losses, relationship struggles, the real deal.
It's a good reminder that everyone is fighting their own battles.
Oh.
We're all dealing with something.
Exactly. So it's important to have compassion, both for ourselves and for others. We're all just trying to figure it out as we go.
So true. But okay, how do we actually navigate all that messiness, those real-life challenges, without losing sight of that bigger purpose, that connection to something greater?
Well, the book offers some pretty practical strategies for dealing with resistance. And it all starts with shifting our perspective.
Okay, I'm all for that.
Oh, yeah.
Although I got to admit, sometimes all that positive thinking stuff can feel, I don't know, kind of forced. Like I'm not going to slap a fake smile on and pretend everything's perfect.
Right. It's not about ignoring reality. It's more about seeing challenges as opportunities for growth. Kelly calls it dissatisfaction as a signpost.
Ooh, I like that. Dissatisfaction as a signpost. So instead of like wallowing in negativity, we can use those feelings as clues, as signals that maybe something needs to change.
Exactly. Ask yourself, what's this feeling trying to tell me? And then, what's one tiny step I can take in a new direction?
Okay, so that's how we start to shift our mindset. But then how do we actually take action? Because awareness is great and all, but the doing part, that's where I tend to get tripped up.
I hear you. It's one thing to have an aha moment and another to actually, do something about it. So Kelly suggests this tool. He calls it the big question. And basically, whenever you're facing a decision, any decision, big or small, you just ask, what do you think I should do?
Now, before people start thinking this is some magic solution where the answers just appear out of thin air,
Right. It's not about that at all.
it's more about surrendering control, right? Like trusting that there's a bigger plan, even if we don't have all the answers.
Yes. And that can be tough, especially in a world that's constantly telling us to have it all figured out.
For sure. It takes practice. And that's where those small, consistent actions come in again, right?
Yeah.
Building those daily habits that nourish that connection to something bigger.
Exactly. Whether it's through meditation, spending time in nature, prayer, whatever resonates with you, it's about making those things a priority.
It's about feeding our souls, not just checking things off a to-do list. And speaking of support, I love how the book emphasizes surrounding yourself with the right people.
Oh, it's huge. Kelly talks about having those John figures in our lives. Mentors, friends, family members, whoever it is for you. But those people who challenge us to grow, who hold us accountable, but also, remind us of our strengths when we need it.
It's like having your own personal cheerleading squad, but with a healthy dose of tough love.
Exactly. And it made me think about that story Kelly tells about his friends challenging him to step up, to make a bigger impact.
Yeah, right. It's amazing how that one conversation, as uncomfortable as it probably felt at the time, led to him starting Dynamic Catholic.
You never know what incredible things can happen when we open ourselves up to feedback from people we trust.
It's true. And it's a good reminder that we don't have to do this thing called life alone. So on that note, I want to leave you all with this question. What's one small step you can take today, right now, to break free from something that's been holding you back?
What's one thing, even a tiny thing, that you can do to align your actions with your purpose?
To let your light shine a little brighter. Because you've got this. We all do.
That's a wrap on this deep dive into resisting happiness. We hope you found some nuggets of wisdom and inspiration to take with you.
Remember, even small changes over time can create a ripple effect. So keep going. You've got this.